It's a little thing we call Football Friday, and I hope you are enjoying it. It's the highlight of many people's week, especially when this guy comes on, the always smiling Jim Barker from the CFL on TSN. Hey, Jim, as we get ready for the CFL free agency window to open, the pre-free agency window, a lot of people hot to trot to talk about that. But let me ask you this, your thoughts on Super Bowl as we get ready for it in New Orleans, the matchup, it's Eagles-KC. What do you think is going to go down there?
Well, last week I went out on a limb and the Commanders just sucked. They were horrible. And I just thought they would play better. And then when we turned around, it went to kickoff. And I just remember last year I said to you, never, if you bet against Pat Mahomes, you're going to lose. And then I went and said, I think that they're at Bills. I was on the Bills bandwagon living in Toronto. You know, you hear so much about the Bills, and I was pulling for them. Two of my guys that used to work with me at the Argos, Canadian guys, Vince Magri, Curtis Ruckavina, they're on the staff there. Vince had a chance to be maybe the first person in history he started the season with the Argos, and they won the Grey Cup. And if they were to go and win a Super Bowl, to win a Grey Cup and a Super Bowl in the same year. So I was pulling for that, and then, boom, the Kansas City just did what they do. And it was almost like, in the first quarter, that first drive, it was like they just said, Barker, this is for you because you're just such an idiot. You changed the way you feel about us, and now we're going to show you why we're going to three-peat. And I'm not betting against them. I think Philadelphia's got a good team, and I think their offensive line's playing as well as they can play, and the defense, I think they're playing with a lot of confidence. But I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to pick Kansas City. I'll tell you that right now. I don't want that same feeling in the first quarter. And I got Andy Reid over there looking at me like, Jim, how can you do that? I just know they're just looking right at me. So I'm not doing it this time. I'm going to take the Chiefs for the three-peat.
I've got them too. It is a hell of a matchup. I don't know if you saw us talking earlier about the Eagles got Saquon Barkley to get here, and they're hungry. Mm-hmm. And Jalen Hurts wins. This is not Brock Purdy happy to be there, San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan forgetting the overtime rules. This is a hungry Eagles team coming in there, right? I suspect it'll be a close game.
Well, there's no doubt. And again, like I said, I'm a big believer in you win with the offensive lines and defensive lines. And I think Philadelphia's offensive line is as good as there is in football right now. They're playing great. They're playing with great confidence. And they got Saquon Barkley, who is just, at any time, he can take anything to the house. They always have the threat of a big play with that guy back there. And Jalen Hurts is, again, we forget about their receiving core. A.J. Brown sometimes is quiet. And Devontae, they just have a really great mesh of bigger guys, speed guys. Philadelphia's got an outstanding team. I just don't see that. Philadelphia is just, there's something there that is different. And again, it's only, it spreads 1.5. And it's going to be indoors, so weather won't be an issue. So again, it's everything points to, normally I would say I would take Philadelphia because of the lines and that kind of thing. The offensive line and defense, not the lines spreads, but because of the two lines. And I just feel like Philadelphia is better up front than Kansas City. But I'm not going against Mahomes. I'm just not going to do it and have to watch a game. It was terrible watching that game the other night against Buffalo. As much as I wanted Buffalo to win, I just never had the feeling like they were going to the whole game.
Yeah, me either. And it's funny. I chuckle to myself every year. Grey Cup weekend, you talk about how much you got to talk about one game. I remember you saying last year in Vancouver, you're like 9 hours is a lot to talk about anything, let alone one game. Can you imagine these guys and Super Bowl and the hours expend and energy? Oh, my God.
It's no different, Rod. We do 5-hour show on Grey Cup Sunday. We do a 5-hour pregame show. And on Saturday, we have a Grey Cup Saturday show that's 4 hours. So it's basically, yeah, you're moving guests in and out, but you're basically talking about the same thing for 9 hours on the air. And that's a difficult chore. But again, it's one of those things that comes around once a year. The Super Bowl's once a year, the Grey Cup's once a year, and it's so special. Both of them. It's just
exactly
like I could talk about it all day, even though it's going to drive me nuts this year with this Kansas City thing.
Well, I know, and you have talked about it all day. Literally, that's your job. And the reason I bring that up is it says right on the screen, 5-time Grey Cup champion. I don't know if any of your tours of duty with the Argos, if you worked with Ken Austin, but it was funny in Sask. I interviewed Kent every game. And, at 10 pole games throughout the season, week 1, Labor Day, home playoff game, I said, is it special to you, Kent, this game? And he's like, it's just another game, Rod. It's just another game. It's one of my favorites. Kent, he's like, it's just another game. We get to the Grey Cup. I'm interviewing him before the game, and I'm like, Kent, let me guess. It's just another game. He's like, it's a championship, Rod. No, it's not just another game. And I'm like, oh, my God. But that's just Kent. But it is not another game. Like you say, they're special, right? What makes them different from inside the team's perspective? How's it different than other game weeks?
Because when you've done something like this, and there's 32 teams in the NFL, and only 30 of them are allowed. 30 of them are gone home and they're done. And now you're one of those two. And in the CFL, yeah, there's only 9 teams, but there's 7 teams that have gone home. And there's only 2 left that the entire country is looking at. And when you have that type of, it's not a pressure, it's an excitement about being one of those, having something to do with one of those 2 teams. That is exciting. That's why you do what you do. And it's like I've been to 6, won 5, and it's every one has been spectacular in its own special way, including the one we lost. And that was in Calgary in 2019 when I was with Hamilton. But every one has been special, and I've been fortunate to be on great teams with great coaches. Don Matthews, he's the guy who taught me everything. He was the best, and he again believed the only thing that matters is playing in the Grey Cup. Nothing else matters. And I believe that that's the way they approach it with the Kansas City. Nothing else matters. All the other stuff, whatever, doesn't matter. Just winning the Super Bowl is the only thing that matters. So again, that's what makes it special, is there's only 2 teams left out of the entire league, and everybody else is at home watching you.
Yeah, it's exciting as hell. So, too, is CFL free agency for those that are into it. And what do you know about Nick Arbuckle going to free agency? His choice, or did the Argos not make an offer to bring him back? He was the MVP, for God's sakes, at their most recent
Well, I'm sure they made an offer. To him. Again, you have to remember, he's a backup quarterback. And, yeah, did he win the Grey Cup? He certainly did. He's had chances to be a starting quarterback for the season and hasn't delivered in the way that he delivered in that Grey Cup game. So obviously there's some going back and forth. My prediction is that Toronto's the best place for him, and he knows that, and he'll end up signing there. A lot of things that'll happen now are posturing. I just saw Toronto sign Janarian Grant back, and Saskatchewan. This is an interesting one. They re-signed Roland Milligan. And you think, wow, that's a great thing. But that can really, not signing Roland Milligan's a great thing. That's one of the, if not the best defensive player in the league. He's up there amongst the best and had just an unbelievable year in terms of everything he does. And he's a great human being, everything. But when you have a guy who's in his second year, that's a low contract. And now when you redo him to get another year, you're paying him up now to where he's up with the higher people on the team. And now that what that does is that eliminates one of those lower price guys that allow you to go out to free agency and get some of those guys you may have to bid for. This year's going to be really interesting because the bidding is going the opposite direction in some positions. I think that for a couple of years, wide receivers have been up well over 200. Eugene Lewis was 300 plus. And now I think the bidding, it's going to go way down at that position. And again, what's so fascinating is you'll see some guys you look and say, wow, that guy's really good. And he may be he's only getting 180,000. And then you look at another guy with another team who re-signs with that team and gets 180,000. And you say, how can he? He's just not that good. But for that team, he's critical. And that's where the ratio and those kinds of things come in. And again, will some guys get paid more than they normally? No question. Wynton McManus is really close to signing with the Argos, but it's going to go right down to the wire. His agent, Christina Phillips, is one of the best in the league, and she's tough. So it's going to go right down to the wire with Wynton. I do believe he'll end up back in Toronto. But again, that's going to be a lot of money because of what he brings to Toronto. To that whole defense. The one thing that has changed the game, though, Rod, is the whole appearance money thing. Because you basically have eliminated the cap. If you need to pay a guy 260 and you only have 210 or 200 on your cap to afford for that position, you give him 60 in appearance money, and you're done. I mean, I think there's, I think there's 6-7 players making six figures in appearance money. Now, again, the owners have put this in as part of the CBA, and there's no cap on it. So the last time they did this was back in 2005, I think or 6, right? And there was when they put the cap back because of some of the stuff that happened with back in the old days with Flutie and Rickman and people getting millions of dollars, and they just couldn't control themselves because you basically have 9 different teams who are all marching to their own drummer, and every single club wants to win. So they do what they have to do to compete. That's where teams get into trouble because some teams can't afford to pay that extra 100,000 in appearance money so that they can sign a player basically for 100,000 less on their cap. And it's going to end up coming to a head, and they're going to abuse it like they just are. It's the way the owners operate.
No, I know that. That's the thing. You think they've got any smarter in the last 25, 30 years? No, they're still the same kinds of guys.
But you have different people. You have different people, Rod, and they have
personalities.
These guys have a lot of money. These guys all have a lot of money, and you have to keep pace with them.
That's right.
You better have deep pockets.
They got a lot of money, and they got that way by not listening to anybody and playing by their own rules. And that's why we get into these problems. And that's why everybody's all horny here about CFL free agency. And I'm like, they're going to report a certain number to the media and then shuffle off this amount of money that we don't hear about. And that's where I lose a lot of interest, I'll be honest with you, because it's what makes the CFL very hard to cover for a guy in my position. Agree or disagree?
Well, I would say that's valid. I think it's more open than it used to be. I think that people have a much better idea of which players are getting what. Again, the problem was in the old days you had, George Grant was the owner of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, was a great guy, but his pockets were nowhere near as deep as some of the other owners. And so teams were having major problems keeping up. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, back in the day when they had to go on the phone thing, when I first came in the league back in 90, 93, 94, they had to go on these, trying to raise money to keep up because teams with owners that had a lot of money were just doing what they wanted to do. Larry Rickman Calgary. Now, he ended up, owing Flutie $1 million. And again, it's those kind of things that give the league a bad name, so that none of that has happened. The other problem that we have in the CFL is, remember, there's no commissioner right now. I mean, Randy Ambrosie is still there, but does he have any power? If he says we're doing this, is anybody going to listen to him? I really doubt it. I just think it's right now is a real critical time for the CFL, because this thing, it could blow up. It's seriously, it's a time when they have to pay attention to their business model and understand that, winning the Grey Cup is really important, but our league being successful is more important. And again, there's 2 years left on the TV deal with TSN, and it's kind of an interesting time right now in the league.
They worry about themselves first, league second, and that's what's never changed. And that's why, for me, I look at college football. NIL has just made legal what was going on before. And a lot of the reporters, again, guys in my position, say, I don't want to know. Let's just call the games and follow the games. And that's kind of where I'm at. Jim, this has been awesome, man. We'll see you in a week. I appreciate the insight.
All right.
We'll be right back with a sports update and viewer takeover the rest of the way. We're live here on the Game Plus Television Network, streaming live and podcast wherever you enjoy your podcast.